For generations, the American dream had this simple promise at its core. Work hard and you can own a home. But lately, for so many people, that dream feels, well, more like a fantasy. So what happened? How did the system get so broken? Let's dig into the numbers and find out.
Okay, it really all boils down to this one number, 32.6%. And look, this isn't just some random statistic. This is the chunk of the average family's income that now has to go towards a mortgage payment. It's the tipping point where affordability just breaks, and it's the key to understanding this entire crisis.
And to really see what a big deal that is, just look at this. Back in 2019, right before the pandemic, that number was a much more doable 21%. That leap from 21 to over 32% isn't just a small market shift, it's a seismic event. It's the reason homeownership is suddenly out of reach for millions of hardworking people.
So how in the world did we get here so fast? Well, this wasn't some accident or a random bit of bad luck. All the evidence points to a crisis that was really caused by three very specific and deeply connected failures in our housing market. And we're going to unpack every single one. First up, there's a huge housing shortfall. We just don't have enough homes. Second, something economists call the lock-in effect, but we're going to call them the golden handcuffs. And third, the absolutely soaring cost to build anything new. So let's start with the most basic problem, supply.
Right now, the United States is short somewhere between 1.2 and 4 million homes. I mean, that is a massive deficit. To put that in perspective, that's like every single house in a huge city like Chicago just disappearing. And when you have that many more people looking for homes than homes available, it's classic supply and demand. Prices have absolutely nowhere to go but straight up.
And that brings us to problem number 2, which this slide explains perfectly. Millions of current homeowners are locked in by what we're calling golden handcuffs. See, they've got these amazing 3 or 4% mortgage rates from a few years back. So why on earth would they sell their home only to have to get a new mortgage at nearly double the rate? Well, they won't. And that decision, made by millions of people, freezes the entire market, choking off the supply of existing homes that would normally be for sale.
Okay, so if we can't buy existing homes, why don't we just build our way out of this mess? Well, that leads us to the third failure, the insane cost of materials. Just look at this chart. Things like tariffs have driven up the prices for essential building materials like aluminum and steel by staggering amounts. And here's the kicker. The builder doesn't just absorb that cost. It gets passed directly onto the home buyer, making every single new home way more expensive before a single nail is even hammered.
Now, all these numbers and economic forces, they're not just abstract ideas on a chart. They have a real, tangible, human cost. And they've created this trap for two specific groups, the people trying to buy their first home and pretty much everyone who rents. For the few who do manage to scrape together enough to buy their first home, just look at the price they're paying. To get the monthly payments down to something they can even remotely afford, more than half of them are now taking on mortgages that are longer than 30 years. They're stretching themselves incredibly thin, signing up for decades of debt that will follow them well into their retirement years. And if you can't buy, well, you're not exactly safe in the rental market either. The gap between the average rent and a typical mortgage payment is often more than $1,000 a month. So how are you supposed to save up for a down payment? You can't. Renters are just trapped. They can't afford to buy, but they're also terrified to move because they know their rent will just go up somewhere else. So yeah, the diagnosis is pretty bleak. But here's the good news. Because we understand the problems so clearly, we can actually design clear, actionable solutions. So let's look at a blueprint for how to fix this, and we'll break it down by time frame. First, in the immediate short term, we need some emergency relief. Think of this as the first aid kit. That means cutting those tariffs on building materials to bring down construction costs right away. It means using smart tools like rate buydowns to help essential workers like teachers and firefighters afford a mortgage. And it means expanding proven programs like the low-income housing tax credit to get more affordable rental units built, like yesterday.
All right, next up, the medium term. This is where we start to fix the underlying structure of the market. This means using federal incentives to get local towns to reform their zoning laws. Change the rules to allow for more than just single-family homes, which is a huge key to increasing supply. It also means creating special tax-free savings accounts to help people build a down payment faster, which is one of the biggest hurdles out there.
And finally, for the long term, we have to build a system that prevents this from ever happening again. And that requires some big foundational changes. Imagine a dedicated bank just for funding the infrastructure, the roads, the sewers, needed for new housing. It also means making sure every single first-time buyer gets access to quality financial counseling, not as a privilege but as a right, setting them up for success from day one. Look, this housing crisis is a tangled mess of policy failures and weird market shifts. But the key takeaway is this: it is not unsolvable. We have a really clear picture of the problem, and we have a whole toolbox of solutions just sitting there, ready to go.
So it really all comes down to this, doesn't it? The evidence is crystal clear. The tools to fix this actually exist. The only question left is about our collective will to act. The question isn't what can we do anymore, it's what will we choose to do.
Housing is just one of the massive, complex challenges we're all facing. If you want to keep making sense of the critical issues that are shaping our world, please subscribe to the channel. And if this helped you, a like and a share goes a long way. It really helps us keep doing this work. Thanks for watching.